organizer, but we're going to have Minyoung Lee.
Oh, okay. So I guess we're going to introduce. Okay, sorry. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us here. And thank you Wabi Sabi for this beautiful space. It's gorgeous. Thank you Litquake for that. Yeah, we are Potluck Club. We are a group of women writers of color, ranging from essayists to novelists, and we started in 2017. We're here to We're here to talk about home. What does it mean to be home? What is home when you're part of a diaspora? These are the questions we wanted to write about today and share with you. We will reflect on identity, belonging, and just the idea of what it means to be home. So first off, we have Grace Hwang Lynch, who will be reading for us. Grace is a San Francisco-based writer with a focus on Asian American culture, food, and family. Her work has appeared on Public Radio International, NPR, NBC, Shondaland, and Salon. She has been a Bona and Tinhouse Fellow, and her essays have been published in anthologies Lavenderia, A Mixed Load of Women, Gouache and Word, and Mamas and Papas on the sublime and heartbreaking art of parenting. Grace is currently working on a memoir. Follow her blog at papamama.com.
And family and all the things that are not said in some families, and how sometimes you find out things kind of sideways, things that people do instead of things that they say. So this is actually an excerpt from my book. I'm reading a couple different excerpts from one chapter, and this is set during my kind of childhood and teenage years, and it is called How to Cook Rice. Like many female graduate students who left to go on for the United States in the 1960s, my mother carried a rice cooker along with her suitcase. She arrived in Brookings, South Dakota, where my father was already working toward his master's degree at the State University. They married in a simple ceremony in the living room of a modest home owned by the Petersons, an older couple that had been renting their basement to my father. There was no honeymoon. She simply moved into the basement. The rice cooker was made by Ta Dung, one of Taiwan's post-war industrial success stories. Every household on the island had one. The squat white appliance traveled from that basement in South Dakota to a cinder block married student apartment in Ann Arbor. Then it was moved to our aluminum-sided colonial in the suburbs of Chicago, and then to a brick ranch house in Idaho Falls. Finally, it found a home in a stucco two-story in San Jose. In the Taiwanese language, zubung means to cook rice. Every night, the tatum steamer faithfully produced a pot of sticky white rice, which would be accompanied by a variety of simple dishes my mother would stir-fry. Summer squash punctuated with a few fingers of green onion, or thin slices of beef sauteed with bell pepper, doused with smoky black flecks of sacha junk. One night, the ringing of the phone interrupted the clatter of chopsticks poking into plates filled with beef and peppers or scrambled eggs clotted with sweet tomatoes. My seat was closest to the corkboard where the phone was, so I jumped to answer. Could I speak to Olivia? No, there's no one named Olivia here. Mother jumped up and snatched the phone out of my hands. Stretching the cord into the shadows of the kitchen, she mumbled, "Okay, yes, thank you." I had seen that name somewhere before. It was marked in blue ballpoint pen on old slides stored in boxes in the hallway closet. My father's blocky letter announced Olivia's graduation. When I held the transparency up to the light, I saw a picture of my mother dressed in a black cap and gown. My father had encouraged her to anglicize her name when she arrived in America, but after a while she went back to her Chinese name. Aido, she muttered, snapping her fingers as she rejoined us at the dinner table. I didn't get the job. What was she talking about? Mother hadn't worked outside the home since I was in early grade school when we lived in a suburb called Naperville, about a half an hour west of Chicago. And then we're going to skip to a different excerpt. Mother's employment situation was short-lived. Soon, Dad took a job with an engineering company near the first U.S. nuclear lab, which moved our family to Idaho Falls, a small Mormon community in the middle of the volcanic desert, perfect for testing nuclear fission and not much else. Not many career opportunities for Mother there. She continued being a housewife when we moved to California. I knew she was bored when I came home one day, and she had taken my brother to the pet store to buy a parakeet. By our second year in San Jose, my father was mysteriously working a lot on weekends, something that had to do with a new coworker. Mother would mope around the house. He says he's teaching the new woman at work how to drive, she said. You should have told her his wife can teach you. The new colleague was a female engineer from Taiwan, curvy, bordering on plump. I had met her at a dinner party where she was the only adult who wasn't half of a matched pair, throwing off the energy in the room. My mother's situation as a housewife was precarious. She was on the hunt for a job. 5 years had passed since she last worked in a research lab. Door after door closed on Olivia. So she reinvented herself, taking night classes to earn a real estate license. So fast forward again. On weekends, my mother dragged my brother and I to her office to pick up boxes of notepads printed with her smiling face. Underneath the headshot was her Chinese first name. Like Madonna, she used no last name. Silver-tongued salesmen hovered at the door of her small office lined with top seller class. I see you brought your sister to work today, heard the skinny one of the classes. Little sister is almost as beautiful as you are, roared the one with permed hair, not to be outdone in this game of outlandish compliments. I was relieved when it came time for my mother, brother, and I to fan out into her sales territory. Running from door to door, I dropped notepads, trying to rid myself of this burden I had not asked for. By the time I started high school, I often found myself waiting after the last bell rang, scanning the parking lot for the boxy shape of her Volvo. Eventually, I started walking home. She called me from her car phone in the late afternoon, asking me to run. To Zubang, I could only rely on my mother's instructions. Put 2 cups of rice in the inside pot, then fill it up with water to the second line, she shouted through the crackle of her car phone. Contrary to many Asian cooks, my mother didn't believe in rinsing the grains. Don't drain the water, it'll wash away the nutrition. Steaming rice is simply a matter of grains, water, and heat, but it is also confusing to the inexperienced cook, especially with our old style of rice cooker. At one time, the white enamel exterior of the machine must have been shiny and spotless, but by the time I was tasked with making rice, the tatung steamer was covered with brown splatters from sitting too close to the stove. The instruction manual, if there ever had been one, had been long thrown away. Did the water go inside the pot or in the rusted outer hull? Both, I thought. One needed a lot of liquid and the other only a little. What went where? Sometimes we ate rice that crunched like birdseed, other times so soggy it was practically porridge. One evening, Mother rushed in the door as I lounged on my canopy bed, pretending to talk about homework for the boy. Never mind that he didn't go to my school. "Ayo," she screamed, stocking feet pounding up the stairs. "You forgot to turn it on." Her voice was loud enough to be heard through the phone. "You can't even make rice," the boy on the other end snickered. Sometimes the sky would turn dark while I waited for the garage door to open. The phone would ring. Mother would be a little bit late. Then, a little later. If I wanted to eat, I would have to take care of myself. Learning how to cook took on new urgency. Gradually, I remembered to put a lot of water on the inside of the pot and a little in the outer chamber. I remembered to push the lever down and to listen for the hissing to tell me it was boiling, rather than lifting the metal lid and wasting the precious steam. My mother became an independent woman. So did I.
Melissa is the founding editor of Hyphen and the former director of San Francisco Writers Corps. She has received fellowships from BONA and the Interdisciplinary Writers Lab. A native of Houston, she lives in San Francisco.
Hi,
I'm going to read an excerpt from an essay that was published earlier this year in Long Reads called Towards Chinatown. It's about my relationship with Cantonese, which is my mother tongue, as a receptive bilingual. So I would say Cantonese will sik tang sikong. I can understand, but I can't really speak that well. Okay, Towards Chinatown. All Chinatowns, though different, are fundamentally the same. The Chinatown in Houston, the city where I grew up, is a conglomerate of strip malls. It was a 30-minute drive from my family's home. We went there for certain things: roast duck, dried mushrooms, fresh fish scooped from the tank and butchered before you. In Chinatown, we ate at a fast casual place where we served ourselves hot tea from a large dispenser as we waited for our number to be called. In Chinatown, we ordered our birthday cakes, light and spongy, topped with fruit, and just the right amount of sweet. In Chinatown, my mother got her hair cut by a woman named Pony. The Chinatown in San Francisco, the oldest one in North America, is a neighborhood of alleys, the buildings stacked close to one another. In the aftermath of the 1906 earthquake and fire, Chinatown merchants hired white architects to rebuild their buildings with pagodas, dragon motifs, and eaves curling skyward. A stage set Chinatown to attract tourists and to protect the neighborhood against city leaders who had planned to seize its land. The earthquake also destroyed the city's municipal records, giving Chinese immigrants an opportunity to claim citizenship and skirt the Chinese Exclusion Act, leading to the rise of the paper son system. By claiming more children back in China than actually existed, the enterprising could sell citizenship papers to others eager to come to America. My own family is here today because an ancestor from my mother's village claimed he had been born on Stockton Street. I don't know any of this family history when I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in the early 2000s. I don't know that in the Chinatown alley stands a modest building with my mother's family name on it, home to our family association. I just know that I want to go to Chinatown. I go to Chinatown for specific reasons: to swim in a saltwater pool, to buy dantats and gourmet maigaos at the bakeries, to eat chicken wings at Capital Restaurant, to get my hair trimmed. But I also like to wander the neighborhood with no particular destination. At about 24 square blocks, San Francisco Chinatown is not that big, but it is densely populated. I often walk through Portsmouth Square, which takes up 1 square city block. In the daytime, elderly residents fill the park. Some of them practice Tai Chi, moving slowly and gracefully in unison. But most of them gather in small groups, sitting on benches, concrete ledges, and small plastic stools to play card games on makeshift tables. One day, I come across 3 musicians together. 2 men play wooden flutes, while a third in a fedora and sport jacket plays the erhu, tenderly weaving his bow. It was here in Portsmouth Square in 1848 that Sam Brannan announced that gold had been discovered in the Sierras, setting off the gold rush and Chinese migration to California. On sidewalks, I swerve around tourists strolling with their cameras out, and the bored women at intersections handing out flyers for lunch specials. I cut through alleys, blending in. In Chinatown, I don't have to think about my Asianness because nearly everyone here is Asian. I love the density of signs, both in Chinese characters and English letters, jutting out over storefronts, one right beside the next as far as I can see. Many of them vertical, like the spines of books. At night, lit up, or traced in neon, they glow in a visual hum. I read them as an homage to the crowded neon signs of Hong Kong, where both my parents grew up after leaving their rural villages. Together, the signs seem to telegraph a collective homesickness. I feel this longing too. How can I go when I've never lived in Hong Kong, only visited? Am I imagining the loneliness of my father, the only member of his family to immigrate to America? For years, he supported his mother and siblings back in Hong Kong while raising his own family. Am I imagining the yearning of my mother, left behind by her parents as a child, as they headed towards America one by one? She was raised by a grandmother in a 1-room apartment, shared with an uncle who smoked indoors. Is this why she, a non-smoker, has lung cancer now? I'm not ready, she saps me over the phone. I need more time. Cutie is only 2, she says, referring to my nephew. She never thought she'd have cancer. She keeps healthy habits, walking regularly, chewing alcohol, buying organic produce, cooking meals that are ching-ching day, light and fresh. As she talks, she switches entirely into Cantonese. It is more Cantonese than she has spoken to me at once in years. That I can understand her feels like a blessing. When I return to Houston for Christmas, I'm flummoxed by what to bring. We don't know her treatment plan yet. What do you pack when your mother has cancer and you don't know how long you'll stay? An acquaintance suggests sweats, but I only pack 1 pair. I can borrow more. My mother and I are similarly sized. Out of her 3 children, I am the one who has her hands with the oval nail beds, her flat feet, her petite height, her shape. I know what kind of clothes look good on her because the same clothes look good on me. I have my mother's body. I have taken my mother's body for granted, assumed it would stay as I have always known it. Middle-aged and strong, an immigrant body that endured and acclimated to the fact of its transplantation. One day, you return home, and your parents are noticeably older. Their hair much greater, their whole beings more fragile. On the last day of December, my sister and I take our mother to the cancer center. My mother's body wrapped in a thin hospital gown, we soon learn, harbors not 1, but 2 cancers. I try to quiet my mind, confine my thoughts to the present, but darts ahead. How can I understand being Chinese if my mother is gone? Who will I ask for the name of that dish we always ordered? When I want to know a detail about the village that we come from? When I recall a memory and seek confirmation of my own personal history? Thank you.
Next up, we have Jenn. Jenn Chen is a San Francisco-based coffee marketer, writer, and photographer. Her journalism and photography pieces have been published in publications like Sprudge, Standard, Fresh Cup, Barista Magazine, and Edible. She's now focusing her writing time on personal essays with an Asian American food lens. When she is not working, you can find her with chips in one hand and a donut in another. You can connect with her at jennchen.com or on social media at the Jenn Chen.
So I'm reading a personal essay excerpt. It's called Making My Way to Cultural Acceptance, and it's about mooncakes. Can you hear me?
A little louder, please. Thank you.
I was familiar with mooncakes in the way you know your childhood snacks. I knew that biting into one resulted in thin flakes that went all over the plate. The bottom was flat, the top rounded and glistening a deep yellow from egg yolk. I knew that sometimes there'd be red bean paste inside or black sesame paste, or if you're lucky, a salted egg yolk. I'd seen my mom make one, but I never knew how, just that it took forever. At least it felt like forever to my younger self. Cultural guilt is knowing names of ingredients only by sight and a taste description, like that crunchy cucumber thing. Someone else naming a dish that you grew up eating, but you never knew the name of. Recognizing when something is in a language, but you can't read it. Spoken to as if you knew a language, and haltingly uttering an accented reply. And cultural guilt is knowing what you want at a butcher shop, but not having the words to ask for it. It was a learning experience. At age 15, my world geography class had a project where we were expected to make something from our culture for the rest of the class. I immediately wanted to share mooncakes with my classmates. For an unknown reason, I, the only Asian in my class, had the innocence and confidence that my classmates would care. I asked my mom for the recipe. She found it and showed me how to roll the dough. I stayed up past midnight making 30 mooncakes. It took me over 4 hours. Each one was painstakingly rolled, re-rolled, and filled with a red bean paste. I don't remember much of their reaction. They didn't really care. I did learn that beans were not expected to be sweet. I never really gave thought about that, fitting food into specific taste categories. Here in the US, beans are savory, period. But I didn't grow up with neatly categorized beans. Why would anyone want to categorize and limit ingredients? My red beans were turned into a paste, stuffed inside pockets of lightly sweet layered flakes. Those same red beans were also turned into a soothing dessert soup, served hot or cold, depending on how we felt. They were found atop mountains of shaved ice or thick slices of sweetened tofu. These red beans were versatile, and those were only the red beans. It would be 15 years before I made mooncakes again. I moved to San Francisco, where I would visit the mall around February and find myself staring, awestruck at how the mall had a plethora of Lunar New Year decorations up. An enormous dragon was inside the entrance. Unironic banners were strung up on the light posts outside. Furthermore, the stores were all in on the holiday. Windows were draped in red and gold. Chinese characters were used correctly. I received mailers from large corporate companies who talked about the New Year as if it was St. Patrick's Day or Labor Day. Despite all this, or maybe because of it, I found myself wanting mooncakes. I didn't want the kind that was peddled in the store. I wanted the kind I grew up with. The kind I couldn't really describe, which made searching for a recipe all the more difficult. Mooncakes have gotten more popular recently, enough so that when searching on Pinterest, recipes from white foodie bloggers mentioning atrocious fillings like cream cheese fluttered up my search results. Even then, they were the rich kind of mooncakes. Taiwanese mooncakes, I typed. A few more scrolls later, I found it, something that looked like what I was used to, and made by someone who wasn't adding extra sugar or subbing in low fat. I read through the recipe and concluded that I could do this. If 15-year-old me can make 30 mooncakes, 30-year-old me could certainly make 14. I gathered my ingredients and set out to find the rest. Red bean paste I found easily. Lard, not so much. Whole Foods was sold out. A nearby Vietnamese grocery mart had no idea what I was talking about. The grocer just stared at me blankly. I nearly gave up, but despite being an amateur baker, even I knew that lard would be better than Crisco. Another one I went into didn't have it, but they were much kinder. My request had to be translated, but eventually figured it out. I asked for a pound of pork fat, far more lard than I needed according to the mooncake recipe. He sliced a chunk off of some pork belly, weighed it, and priced it arbitrarily at less than $5. As I started looking at recipes for lard back at home, I understood the concept. It was easy boiling the fat, draining it out. What I didn't know was how long the process would take and how little it would make. Be careful of which fat you get, I learned too late. The best lard would be leaf lard, a white, expensive, bougie leaf lard found in high-end butcher shops. The smell is off-putting, wrote another blogger. I sniffed the lard in progress and shook my head, confused. It smelled like fat, a little like pork, but mostly just heated fat. It took me 6 hours to make the lard. It was a tedious process of slowly melting cut-up fat into a few tablespoons of tap water. It was mostly passive, but I did have to stir occasionally. With every hour and every stir, I kept wondering if all this effort was worth it. Would anyone besides me care? By the time I finished, the lard was too hot, and it was far too late in the day to start on my mooncakes. I vowed next time I would buy my lard. They came out beautifully, yet the mooncakes took me 4 hours. 4 hours of determination and guilt being baked into each one. As I rolled a dough ball in my hand, I thought about how I wanted this cultural connection. Knew that the holidays was important, yet I didn't know enough. Would I ever know enough? How much more baking would I need to do to assure myself that I was Taiwanese enough? I sent a photo of them to my mom, who told me she bought hers that year. My cultural guilt eased off a little. At the end of my latest mooncake attempts, I staged them. Look, I insisted to my Instagram followers, these are mooncakes, and they're mine and my culture. What I didn't write was how disconnected I felt from my supposed culture. Starbucks sold mooncakes that year. Packaged beautifully in singular wraps and tied up with a perfect red bow. Even KFC got in on the action. When your culture becomes consumed, it's harder to identify which made it yours and which was now for the public. Baking from a hazy memory of a food is a trying way to redeem yourself and assuage that self-imposed guilt.
Michelle is also a music journalist that has written about Latinx punk, reggaeton, and rock alternativo from Latin America. 7 of her essays were featured in the seminal music Bible, Women Who Rock, and her book, Why Rage Against the Machine Matters, is slated to be released in 2020 by the University of Texas Press.
So I'm going to be performing a spell from this book, Hexing the Patriarchy, and it's based on, or actually inspired by, something that I learned about when I was in Texas doing a feature about curanderos. So for the uninitiated, a lot of times the curanderos are also known as folk healers, but the reason that the rise of popularity is so big today is in Texas, for example, there are so few places where immigrants can get healthcare. So in the last 2 years, more than 30% of all WIC clinics have closed all over Texas, and more people are afraid to go get healthcare because if their documentation is a transition, they can be denied being their citizenship. And so, as a result, where are people getting healed? And my research showed that they're going to curanderos. But so what I'm going to do is first I'm going to give you guys a little background on a ceremony I'd like to perform. And then you all can opt in or opt out of receiving a rose. And then I'll do the spell. So, curandera Brenda Salgado has found that many migrant women find healing in the rituals of curanderismo. Brenda is a Nicaraguan American community leader and has worked extensively in nonprofits. She incorporates many types of healing into her style of curanderismo, including a healing ceremony that she learned from a curandera in Xochimilco, Mexico. This ceremony is called the harmonization of the roses. Brenda takes 18 roses and brushes them across her patients on 13 points of their body. Wherever the rose petals fall symbolizes where her patients are holding on to the most trauma. She continues brushing the roses across these women until she has used all 18 roses. Then she engages in a series of platicas and blesses and prays for her patients to let go of any burdens that are not hers to carry. We're teaching women to learn to be in their dignity, in their power as women, to reclaim their connection to their womb, intuition, their ancestors, and Mother Earth, because we're needed right now to lead our communities. We have to do our healing work in order to step into those positions of power. So, if any of you feel like you might be holding on to something you don't want to be holding on to, or if you feel like you deserve to be touched by a rose, I will be handing this out, and if you really want rose, you might want to come up closer. I've got, whoops, so sorry. So sorry. I've got a total of like 40, so. This is where, guys, I'm going to go fast. Yes. Yeah, if you pass this on, that'd be great. If you want to pass this out, and I'm just going to steal one to you.
Babies? Someone with the babies?
I can take it.
And for those of you who are afraid of spells, think of it as a prayer. I consider myself a Catholic witch, it's all good here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the prayer first. Anyone else want a rose? So what I'm going to do first is I'll read the prayer, and then afterwards we can silently kind of brush ourselves wherever you feel like it. So this is called a prayer for those without a prayer. I remember the Mexican folk saint Teresa Urea. She was a curandera and folk healer revered for her ability to heal and her hands and to channel the dead to perform miracles. Records show that she healed thousands and was known as Santa Teresa de Cabora. In fact, she was so powerful that the Mexican dictator, Porfirio Diaz, was afraid of her influence. He banished her to the United States, and her followers, the Caboristas, waged a war in her name against tyranny, against patriarchy, against all that brings spirits and turns us into dust. Like Teresa, we are all cajitas, or vessels of hope and dreams of human spirit. Let us see these spirits. Let us stand alongside them. Let us support them. Begin. Say this once with your heart on your heart, with your hand on your heart. You will never erase me. You will never erase me. It's a prayer I find myself repeating. I think of the undocumented immigrants living hidden in churches, the underground railroads of today. I think of the people afraid to go to school, to hospitals, or to work for fear of being deported. Say this 3 times with your eyes closed. You will never destroy us. 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 The first time, hiss it. The second time, spit it. The third time, surrender it. Reach down, touch the earth, and whisper to the plants, I belong here. Su espíritu pertenece aquí. We all belong here. Your roots are my roots. Take a handful of soil, make a fist. Think of what earth would be like without the presence of patriarchy, without dueños, owners, without fear, without hate. Blow on the soil until there is anger, rancor left. Fold your hands and pray. Thank you, Teresa. You will never be erased. So, if you feel, so this idea kind of came with this idea that many immigrant women have never been given roses. They're the ones in the fields getting the roses. And so to bless yourself with the idea that you deserve to be touched by a rose. So you can close your eyes and just touch yourself at any place that you feel like you might need healing. You can also do this at home. If you feel like I look like a freak, it's a good time. And thank you. And so that's the spell. And these are 2 poems I brought. And one is where I've most felt at home, which my tia is Vanity. So this is called Vanity. For mi tia and the women who see themselves in her reflection. There are no ugly women, only lazy ones, she tells me. Sitting, staring, speaking at her vanity. Liquid becomes foundation, becomes powder, becomes shadow, becomes liner, becomes mascara, becomes liner, becomes lipstick, becomes woman, becomes beautiful, becomes her, becomes me, becomes you. And the bangles she wears stack, like all the unanswerable questions, like, will he love me tonight? And I will see her eyes mist, and I will see her go through the motions of happy birthday face. And when she leaves, I will sit at her vanity, I will smell her perfume and her talcum, and I will powder my 6-year-old self, and open my eyes and pucker my lips, and blow myself a kiss and think, every woman deserves to believe she's beautiful. And so I'm from San Francisco, as in I was born in the Richmond district. And when I moved back, it was really interesting to see my skyline change. And that Salesforce, no matter where you go, follows you. So this is called the Eye of the Panopticon. Really glad you guys get that. Thank you so much. There's a new eye in the city, Eye of Sauron, Tower of the Tarot, tell you the story of the fall. Some of the best minds built broken beings, not in God's 7 days, but in Mark's 7 years. Progress, in opera, in failed hearts. We let tech build a monument in his image. God is founder, his power, his state is we don't take hash here anymore. And now the panopticon with camera eyes, trained to facially recognize you, me, brothers and sisters. We once were free, now we're found. And maybe if Russia didn't do it first, sick storm on its people, I'd close my eyes and live, laugh, love. But in the eye of the panopticon, Zach's 5-sided histogram, there's a skyline changed for profit, mistaken profit. We gave up a city for a moving image with dancers trapped at the top. I heard it's lonely at the top. But how would I know when all I see are shadows suspended? Like those stepped-on specters who can't even look at the eye of the panopticon.
Next up, our reader is Jennifer Ng. Jennifer is working on a novel based on her grandparents' lives in China, Peru, and the United States. Her nonfiction and fiction work has appeared in Writer's Circle, Arcana, Havoc, Cold Creek Review, Shut Up and Write Zine, and Airplane Reading. She published a nonfiction book, Ice Cream Travel Guide, on sale here, which documents the journeys of global ice cream makers. In her writing, she explores identity and relationships. If she was asked about her favorite hobby at the age of 8, she would have answered observing, which is still a joy and an inspiration for storytelling. Read more about her at jennison.com or follow her on Twitter at jennison.
So I'm reading Ice Cream Travel Guides. Sometimes to know a book is to start at the end, so I'm reading an excerpt at the very end to give away the ending. Okay. Simply put, I love ice cream in a bowl, in a cone, from a tub, and most of all, on my tongue. But why travel so far from home to find it? It started on my first morning in Bangkok in February 2009. Jet lagged and sleep deprived, I sat up at 6 a.m. The haze of Bangkok's skyline appeared outside the 9th floor hotel window. Exhaustion tore in my eyes, demanding sleep that wouldn't come. For the next 2 weeks, I would be traveling with 11 people, classmates, friends of friends, significant others. My boyfriend had backed out the trip 2 months earlier, worried about unemployment during the recession. I pushed aside my disappointment and started planning hotels, airplane tickets, ladyboy shows, kickboxing, Asian rooms, cooking classes. On the flight, I studied guidebooks and practiced Thai words. But now, I could not sleep. And my mind spun. I tossed and turned in the bed, alone, tired, angsty. I don't like beaches. I felt abandoned. What if I didn't like the group activities? Why did I agree to come here and do like the movie setting for tourists who make bad decisions? Why did I stay home and save money? I needed to get away. I'll be back, I mumbled to Sydney friend. I'm going to take a walk. Outside, the heat rose, a stark contrast to the chilly mornings of San Francisco. Thai script and red spray paint filled the wall like blood splatters. Through windows, I heard pots and pans clattering as the day's cooking commenced. Young students in uniforms gossiped as if I wasn't present. Above, construction workers stomped through 24 building skeletons. A banner in English declared, "We build what we dream." Stopping on an overpass, I stare at a strange cityscape, familiar golden arches looking through concrete buildings, tracks, and power lines. I pass a colorful open-air market bustling with morning activity. Small scales lay ready for weighing, garlands of jasmine flowers gave grace to rows of stands, punctuating the air for scent. Housewives bartered, locals gawked with broken teeth. I dragged my feet, wondering about what I had gotten myself into. All I saw were endless rows of things that I didn't want to eat, unfamiliar typefaces of foreign land. Then suddenly, there it was. A metal cart rolled down the road, rings seductive bells, it glistened in the sun, and I recognized a symbol, a circle on top of a triangle. My eyes widened, and I had to have it. Just the previous week, I had rushed downtown to the San Francisco Travel Clinic. A woman with thick 80s style glasses sat me down and dispensed advice. Only eat food that is cooked in front of you. Make sure it's hot. Okay, I said, agreeing to her common sense. Do not eat cold food, she said and wagged her finger. You don't want to have traveler's diarrhea. Walking toward the metal box with wheels in Bangkok, I hesitated, remembering the warnings. But then the ice cream man smiled. I smiled back and gestured wildly to the picture of ice cream. One, I said, as I held up a finger. As I dug out cash, he placed 3 scoops on a small cone and handed it to me. I nodded and took a lick, while grasping for the only Thai word I knew at that moment. Bowing my head, I said, "Arroy, it's delicious." The man chuckled and returned his wrinkled hands to ringing the bells in the cart. Years later, I don't remember the flavors he gave me. Corn, mango, dragon fruit, guava, cheese. What I remember is a feeling of nostalgia. Being 6 years old and stealing a lip from my sister's cone, a preteen receiving a bowl of vanilla ice cream after one of my parents' greasy homemade meals. A college student swallowing ice cream to wash away heartbreaks. As I finished the cone, my heart felt optimistic. My steps were lighter, and I smiled with the locals. I purchased a jasmine garland. I paid a woman to trim my hair. I tasted the broth of spicy noodle soup at a stall. I admired the graffiti that turned rusty nails and peeling paint into smiles. I sampled coconut pancakes. Even better, this ice cream lover avoided food poisoning. I'm going to skip it a little bit ahead. So my final destination, this book is about ice cream all around the world. I interviewed a lot of people and wrote the book. But this is the last part. So my final destination in my travels was Ben & Jerry's headquarters in Vermont. By then, several ice cream makers across the world had cited this ice cream manufacturer as their inspiration. Through their colorful factory and their test kitchen, I discovered that ice cream is only one part of the equation. The team tells me about the GMO-free ingredients, the annual giveaway of ice cream providing same-sex benefits for their employees, and sourcing from bakery that employs people who cannot find work elsewhere. Taking care of their employees and the company's future is one thing, but it's a social mission that carries the blue. Ben & Jerry's started as a small community business and continue to find innovative ways to improve quality of life across the world. It's about giving back. This is what I really discovered through my journey. The best ice cream is not the ice cream found at far-flung destinations. It's the ice cream that you can share with others. It may be the ice cream at the local ice cream shop, a fancy one or a not so fancy one. It may be the ice cream pint or a gallon that you purchase at a grocery store. I believe that the world had an answer for me. As I visited ice cream shop after ice cream shop, I found out that it wasn't quite out there. Like the saying goes, it was at home all along. Ice cream is community. For me, what I discovered is that ice cream around the world is about the people. Ice cream is happiness. Whereas my sister later pointed out, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy ice cream. So let's go get ice cream.
Next up is Sabina Khan-Ibarra. Sabina is a writer and editor with work published on Blog Her, Huffington Post, In Culture magazine, and other outlets. She has an essay published in the anthology Faithfully Feminist, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim Feminists on Why We Stay, published by White Cloud Press. She is the founder of Muslima Montage, a platform for Muslim women to share their diverse stories, and works on making space for Muslim women within the dominant narrative. She is an MFA creative nonfiction candidate at SFSU. She is the first place winner of the 2019 Martha's Vineyard Institute for Creative Writing Fellowship. Sabina lives in Half Moon Bay with her husband and children. Oh.
Thank you, Wally, for hosting us. Okay. Last year I read something kind of depressing. This year, not so much. My heart's deepest yearning. Turn me into droplets of rain, so I sprinkle upon your pretty face. Then coat me with the dreary as I wander alone. On the 2-hour drive to my parents' home, I crooned along to one of my favorite Peshto songs, Karar. I felt the sweetness of the words fill me, the longing and adoration of a man for his beloved. Turning to my husband as he drove, I swung my arms towards him, singing along and batting my eyelashes. He smiled and switched lanes. After the song ended, I sighed and turned on the nursery rhymes our son had been begging for. What a beautiful song, I said, feeling amorous after listening to the gorgeous lyrics. Yes, it is, my husband nodded. It has odd time signatures, not the typical 4/4s we so often hear in American music. I tried again. I meant the words. I translated this song for you before, remember? Qarar means the heart's deepest yearning, not in a corny, cliche way, but in a more profound, intense sense of longing. With my broken Peshto, unable to capture the beauty of the poetry, I tried interpreting the whole song again to him. After a few frustrating minutes, I stopped. My husband smiled, oblivious to my disappointment. We listened quietly to our children's playlist until we reached our destination. I thought about how once upon a time I had convinced myself that I could only marry a Pashtun man, someone who had the same cultural values as me and shared my language. But then I realized that what I truly valued was how my husband respected my need for silence and space, that he was the first person to ask me what I really wanted to do with my life, and referred to me as a writer even when I shied away from the title. I cherished his ability to express what he truly felt, his need to make me smile, his gentleness with children, his inability to lie, his humility. These were just some of the reasons I fell in love with him. On our wedding day, he danced stiffly to Pashto music. He didn't speak a word of Pashto yet all of my relatives were instantly besotted with him because of his joyful gestures and smiles told them all they needed to know. When one of the slower songs came on, he turned to me and pulled me onto the dance floor with him. We danced in a circle the way one does when dancing to Pashto songs. Every time I looked up at him, he was watching me smiling, just as in love with me, as I was with him. We have to go to my uncle's house. There's no way around it. It was the fifth time I was explaining to him this very simple idea to my husband that, It was the fifth time I was explaining this very simple idea to my husband in the span of half an hour. It doesn't make any sense. We were planning to go to Half Moon Bay this week, and he replied. Plans change. We can go after we visit my uncle. So every time someone comes from Pakistan, we have to show up, like an entourage or a jirga. He was trying to be funny, and I wasn't in the mood to laugh. No, not every time someone comes from Pakistan, but when a relative visits after a long time and his father has died during the trip, we have to go give our condolences, I repeated as patiently as I could. Our daughter began crying, adding to the tension between us. My husband carried her out of the room while I finished packing alone. We visited my uncle, but the conversation left me exhausted and wondering if there would be an uproar every time I had to go to do something that my husband wasn't used to. Things were getting easier between us as we adjusted to being in a partnership with someone so dissimilar to us. I was becoming accustomed to his very small family who rarely saw each other, and he was getting used to having very little personal space when we visited my large family. My whole life, Mama and Baba had long conversations in Pashto. Baba sang to Mama in the language that they grew up with. When they were at the store, they spoke to each other in Pashto before making the final decision, so the salesperson didn't know what they were saying. And cultural nuances were simply understood and did not need to be explained, like how the men naturally convened to one room while the women stayed on the other side of the house. They knew that tea was served to all guests, and asking whether a guest wanted tea or not was considered rude. This was known as the honoring of the guest, a tradition of Minyoung Lee, which had been carried through generations and inherently adopted. That euphony is something that I sometimes feared I would never have with my husband. Even my children spoke only English because we spoke English, not just to them, but to each other as well. I've tried to speak more Pashto in the home, but as the only Pashto speaker, it's difficult. Wouldn't it be easier if my husband spoke Pashto too? But my language and customs die out because of the choice I made to marry a man from a very different part of the world from me. Musa and Anabia would never know how gorgeous the word Zro was, because when I say heart in Pashto, it's not simply the anatomical place in my body. It is the deepest part of my soul. When I say Zarbisa, like my mother called me, the crown of my heart, does not do it justice, because it is the most sacred part of my heart, where only precious things reside. I want my husband to tell me he loves me using the language my parents and forebears did. One day, a few weeks later, at the insistence of my husband, I was in my room writing. Hearing my son squeal, I stopped mid-sentence and went out to check on him. My husband was wrestling with the children. He had pinned Musa, my son, to the floor, and Anabia, my daughter, was hanging off his back. Tell Baba you love him and I will give you bai, he said to Musa. He used the Pashto word for milk. I smiled and continued hiding behind the wall. No, Musa screeched, laughing at as his father tickled him. Anabia joined in. Baba, me too. Baba, me too, she said, and he did the same to her. After wrestling for a few minutes, he kissed them both on their cheeks, and they kissed him in return. My husband put Anabia on his shoulders, just like my father used to carry me on his. She pulled his hair. My laughter revealed my presence. Hey, honey, are you done writing, he said. I nodded, too emotional to answer. The children ran over to me, and my husband joined us. I love you, honey, he said, kissing me on the forehead. Warmth washed over me. This was my world, my little wonderful world, exactly as it should be, and just as I wanted it to be. I love you too, Zamazra, I said to him. In this world where we were creating our own tradition, he understood me perfectly.
This is the Bay Area.
Thank you so much, Bobby Sabi, and all of you for being here tonight. This is from my forthcoming second collection of poetry, and I really believe as poetry is a form of protest and activism, so the poems I'm going to be reading today, they do examine home, but different ideas of what is home and like the land we're on, which actually belong to other people, that is also our home, and homes that are far away, homes we've left behind.
So we inhabit multiple homes, so I'm going to be talking about that through my poetry. So Columbus Day just occurred a couple of days ago, and I have a poem about Columbus. So who thought he was sailing east but went west? So the poem is called "What Happens When Men Never Ask for Directions." He sails west but thinks east, knocking down signs when the sun blinds his eyes, screaming "Indio, Indio," as he spots a lip of land and lobes of gold. It is the 9th day and the natives smile, tan skin, white teeth, gifting him cotton and parrots, trained to chant "Colombo, Colombo," night and day. On the journey back home, the parrots drive him insane, squawking his name. No clothes, no silk, just the sun in his eyes, and one body stored in the hull and crooked lines, as royal promises burned through a magnifying glass, setting all maps afire. So the next poem I wrote after Trump had been elected and had put on a Muslim ban, and some of my dearest friends are Muslim. And one of my friends, my best friend, she was so upset, and she's a citizen, and she's like, what if I get deported? What if, how can I leave my home? What about my books? And she's a writer as well. And I'm like, you're being silly, nothing's gonna happen to you. But that conversation led to this poem. They say the Muslim ban is temporary. But I've decorated my home, she says, and what if they make us leave? I know it sounds silly, but each painting I've chosen with such care. See this one? It's of a castle from a street artist in Salzburg. And my green leather couch made in Italy has the shape of my bottom on the leftmost cushion, and my kilim rug from Turkey. After we bargained for 1 hour, the rug seller gave me a free Nazar evil eye amulet and said, we all need it. Oh, we're screwed. But this is the 21st century. And what if my books in crooked piles? Would they burn them? There are only a few that would be considered blasphemous. Okay, the next poem I'm reading. So I don't know if there's anybody who's from Wales here or who's familiar with Welsh, but one of the words I came across, which is Welsh, it's hwraith, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, so forgive me, but it's such a beautiful word, and so I'll just read the poem, which sort of explains what it means too. What the Welsh call it. Hwraith for the house that loves me back when I touch its walls, coating my fingers in a soft, powdery yellow. Hwraith for the gate with our good name painted in navy blue, for the pomegranate tree in one corner whose fruit splits into a sideways grin, for the cooler throwing cuscus-scented spray on our faces on a scorching Sunday afternoon. Hwraith. Despite 2 languages rolling from my tongue, I borrow from a third one, a word for longing of homes hard to return to, no longer there. Hwraith for the PCO ISD boots, voices from Videsh crackling on the line, shouting, Kaise ho, sab theek? And the pause before we say, all's fine. Hwraith in bougainvillea flowers, carpeting the road, folded love letters with no return address. Okay, so I think all of us are probably really hungry from all the poems about, stories about food and stuff like that. So I don't want to be left out, so I'm going to be reading something which has food in it as well. Well, it's about Patel groceries, and I don't know how many of you have been to the grocery store. So it's called Everyday Confessions and Epiphanies at Patel Grocery. Admit it, you miss the heat, the hustle bustle, the constant invasion of privacy, the shrill cries of crows, the baritone moo of cows, and the constant swish of ceiling fans flapping frantic like birds' wings. But you are here now, trailing the aisles for Assam tea and bay leaves, with glimpses of Bollywood king Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol, his queen, crooning their love for each other in the Swiss Alps from a TV mounted high on the wall. Paper-thin pulkas are stacked on the counter, wrapped in aluminum foil and in big foil trays. Masala samosas as crumbly and fragile as you are. Behind the cash register, You spy gluttony, sin, and sex via Cadbury fruit and nut chocolate, tiny tins of saffron, and bottles of pan masala and musli powder for his virility. Patel uncle looks at you and says, guavas have just arrived, big as grapefruits, and starts yelling at the young man replenishing the vegetable bin with fat green fingers of okra to bring the boxes up front. You wave your hands in protest and say it's okay, you don't need them today. You think of how guava seeds get stuck in your teeth, but Patel uncle doesn't listen. He takes the guava from the box, unwrapping the purple tissue that has kept it safe all the way from Mexico, and wipes it against his shirt before pulling a knife from behind the counter. He halves the guavas in his palm and cuts it further into 8 pieces. He's a man who knows his way around a blade. Handing you a pale pink slice, Uncle says, just try, don't buy. The guava is sweet. Uncle is right as always. As you wait in line to pay for your groceries with 2 giant guavas in your cart that will cost $6, the man behind you hums a ghazal, a little too loudly. Jhuki jhuki si nazar, bekarar hai ki nahi. Ah yes, the downward gaze. Don't look up, but you do. Ghazal man has an obscenely black overdyed beard, dons a dirty white tunic that is stretched over his belly, and swings a little from side to side. He taps you on the shoulder and asks you what they call bottle gourd in Hindi. You reply, dragging your cart forward, Loki. I live with my mother, he says. She always does the shopping and knows the names of these things. Me, I only know how to buy chicken. He says this with pride, enunciating, chicken. You nod silently, spell the whiskey from his lips, and let out a sigh of relief as the cashier yells, next! Yes. You come here for the same reasons I do. Not just to buy fresh coriander or dosa batter or Parle G biscuits, but for something else. The cashier informs you that your bill is over $100, so you get a free Bollywood DVD. You're surprised and almost excited. For who doesn't like a free gift? But when you see it, your smile wanes. It's a pirated copy of Bittu Boss, some B-grade Bollywood film you've never heard of. You say, that's okay, keep it. I've already seen it. And there's the first lie of the day, because you don't want to hurt it. As you push your cart towards your reliable Japanese-made luxury car, press the square button on the key to open the trunk. You remember how the help back home would rush towards you with chocolatey arms saying, no, madam, please give, relieving you of bulging grocery bags. You start the car and think about what you will make for dinner tonight after picking up your son from daycare. He likes spiral pasta, you soft, thin rotis, and your husband, fragrant basmati rice. Admit it, you are lonely in this beautiful valley flanked by rolling green hills and palm trees, lonely amidst the drooping orange and lemon trees that are so bountiful they rot. Yes, you are lonely like I am, shedding tears shaped like stars, trapped behind blue and white bars, seeds of grief stuck between your teeth like guava seeds. This last poem was written about the lockdown that's happening in Kashmir right now in India. It's been over 60 days where Kashmir has, it's hard to explain, I'm sure all of you read the piece, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I'm going to read a poem called Ghazal Under Siege. Like a thief, I'll sneak up from behind tonight, steal all your couplets and other words tonight. In that post office without a country, all your letters remain unread tonight. And under skies etched with barbed wire so silver, the stars were crowns with thorns tonight. Make a wish on the lash of a valley, hope treading flesh like a rubber pellet tonight. No news is good news, they say. Mouths stuffed with apples, they cannot harvest tonight. Prayers soft as cashmere float untethered on a lake full of boats that are moored tonight. The living, so silent, they're fear dead. Even though they're at home, they're not home tonight. Oh poet, make haste with your pen. Sing a song for the voiceless with this poem tonight.
Everyone, that was the last reader of tonight. Thank you everyone for this wonderful space, and make sure to check out phase 3.
If you have surveys, and you're going up the door, you can either Margaret, holding up